Admiral Krex stared at the holographic display with 4 eyes that had seen 1,000 conquered worlds. Today, however, those eyes twitched with something uncomfortably close to confusion. The blue marble rotating before him should have been just another addition to the galactic hegemony's ever-expanding collection of subjugated planets. Should have been. Gen. General Voth, explain to me again why our preliminary invasion fleet is currently floating in 17 million separate pieces around Earth's moon. Krex's voice carried the kind of calm that preceded executions. General Voth, a hulking creature whose species had evolved from apex predators on a world where everything tried to kill everything else, shuffled his feet like a schoolchild caught stealing lunch credits. Well, sir, it appears we may have miscalculated the humans' defensive capabilities. Miscalculated? Krex's laugh sounded like metal grinding against metal. We sent 12 dreadnoughts against a species that hasn't even achieved faster than light travel. 12. Each one could level a continent. How exactly does one miscalculate turning a primitive world into cosmic dust? The war room fell silent except for the gentle hum of life support systems and the occasional nervous clicking from Commander Zilt's mandibles. The assembled military leadership of the most powerful force in 3 galaxies suddenly found the floor markings incredibly fascinating. Perhaps, suggested General Thane, whose people had conquered their enemies through superior strategy rather than brute force, we should review the battle logs, understand what went wrong before we commit further resources. Krex's tentacles writhed in annoyance. Fine. Computer, display Earth engagement logs. Authorization. Admiral Krex, clearance Omega 7. The hologram shifted, displaying a tactical overview of Earth's solar system. Red dots marked the positions of the 12 dreadnoughts as they had approached the 3rd planet from the Sun. Everything looked perfectly standard for a routine planetary subjugation. Computer, play engagement sequence at standard speed. What happened next defied every principle of warfare the assembled generals had learned over their collective centuries of military experience. The 12 red dots representing their dreadnoughts moved into standard formation around Earth. Standard procedure called for a demonstration of overwhelming force to encourage immediate surrender. The first dreadnought, Inevitable Victory, began charging its primary weapon. The plasma cannon could crack a planet's crust with a single shot, more than sufficient to convince any reasonable species to submit to the hegemony's rule. That's when the humans did something completely unreasonable. Instead of cowering in terror or broadcasting desperate surrender signals, every major military installation on Earth opened fire simultaneously. Not with the primitive nuclear weapons the reconnaissance reports had indicated, but with weapons that shouldn't have existed. Pause playback, commanded Krex, his voice tight. Computer, analyze the weapon's signatures from Earth's defensive installations. The AI's response came in its usual matter-of-fact tone. Analysis complete. Earth's defensive weapons utilize adaptive plasma technology approximately 400 years ahead of their documented technological level. Energy output per weapon exceeds hegemony standard by a factor of 12.7. The silence in the war room became profound. General Voth cleared his throat, a sound like boulders grinding together. Sir, perhaps there was an error in our reconnaissance data? Oh, there was definitely an error, Krex replied, his voice dripping with sarcasm. The error was thinking this would be easy. The playback resumed. The humans' impossible weapons carved through the dreadnoughts' shields like they were made of tissue paper. But that wasn't the truly disturbing part. The disturbing part was how the humans fought. Every species the hegemony had conquered followed predictable patterns. They either surrendered immediately when faced with overwhelming odds, or they fought with desperate, uncoordinated fury until they were crushed. Humans did neither. They fought like they had been planning for this exact scenario for decades. Their defensive fire was coordinated across multiple continents with precision that suggested a single tactical mind directing the entire planet's military response. More unsettling still, they adapted their firing patterns in real time as the battle progressed. Computer, highlight tactical adjustments made by Earth forces during engagement. The display filled with cascading data streams showing how human weapons modified their frequency. power output, and targeting algorithms throughout the battle. They were learning, adapting, evolving their tactics faster than the dreadnought's computers could compensate. Commander Zilt's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation among her species. Admiral, this level of tactical adaptation should be impossible for a species without combat experience against our technology. And yet, Krex observed dryly, here we are, watching our inevitable victory become an inevitable disaster. The battle logs showed the moment when human tactics shifted from defensive to offensive. Weapons platforms that hadn't existed moments before emerged from hidden installations across Earth's surface. These weren't hastily constructed defenses. They were purpose-built anti-spacecraft systems that demonstrated intimate knowledge of hegemony ship design. How? General Thane whispered, his normally composed demeanor cracking. How did they know our shield frequencies, our hull compositions, our tactical doctrines? The answer came from an unexpected source, a junior intelligence officer named Operative Krex, who had been quietly reviewing data feeds from the edge of the room. Sir, I've been analyzing the humans' communication patterns during the engagement, and they weren't just fighting us. They were talking to each other. Species communicate during combat. Krex replied with forced patience. This is not revolutionary information, Operative. Yes, sir, but not like this. They were laughing. The admission hung in the air like a toxic gas. Iconmession, 1A, DTN in Quathel. Every general, admiral, and commander in the room stared at the young operative, as if he had just declared that space was actually made of pudding. Laughing? General Voth's voice climbed several octaves. During combat? While facing annihilation, Operative Krex activated his personal display, showing intercepted human communications from the battle. The translation algorithms had worked overtime to render human speech into something the assembled aliens could understand, but the emotional content came through clearly. Listen to this, Krex said, playing a recording. This is from one of their military commanders during the height of the engagement. The voice that filled the room was unmistakably human, confident, relaxed, almost conversational. Target the third ship from the left. Charlie Squadron. Use the new frequency modulation we discussed. And remember, these things have weak points right behind their forward shield generators. Let's see if we can thread the needle. Another voice responded with what could only be described as amusement. Copy that, command. Though I have to say, for such an advanced alien civilization, their ships have remarkably predictable design flaws. The recording continued with more exchanges, each more disturbing than the last. The humans discussed tactics with the casual ease of beings who had faced this exact situation countless times before. They shared jokes, offered encouragement, and provided technical corrections to each other's targeting solutions. Most unsettling of all, they seemed to be enjoying themselves. This is impossible. General Thane stated flatly, no species enjoys their first contact with a superior military force. Fear, desperation, resignation, these are normal responses, not entertainment. Admiral Krex studied the tactical display with growing unease. The pattern of the engagement made more sense now, but that sense was deeply troubling. The humans hadn't just been defending their world. They had been testing the hegemony's capabilities. Computer, analyze human weapon deployment patterns, cross-reference with standard first contact protocols. The AI processed the request with its usual efficiency. Analysis complete. Human weapon deployment suggests prior knowledge of hegemony military doctrine. Estimated probability of coincidental tactical alignment, 0.003%. The implications hit the assembled military leadership like a physical blow. Commander Zilt was the first to voice what everyone was thinking. They knew we were coming. More than that, Krex said slowly. Pieces of a very disturbing puzzle clicking into place. They've been preparing for us. The question is, how long? Operative Krex cleared his throat nervously. Sir, there's more. I've detected similar defensive installations on every major landmass on Earth. These aren't recent constructions. Based on the integration with their existing infrastructure, I estimate construction began at least 50 Earth years ago. 50 years. The number rolled around the war room like a grenade with a pulled pin. 50 years ago, Earth had been a collection of primitive nation-states that couldn't even agree on basic trade agreements. 50 years ago, their most advanced weapons were chemical rockets and nuclear warheads. 50 years ago, they shouldn't have known the galactic hegemony existed. General Krex's voice had taken on a dangerous edge. Retrieve all reconnaissance reports filed on the Sol system for the past century. I want to know if we missed something. While Voth fumbled with his datapad, Admiral Krex continued studying the battle logs. The more he analyzed the human response, the more questions arose. Their tactics weren't just effective, they were specifically designed to counter hegemony standard operating procedures. The humans had targeted shield generators first, weapons arrays second, and propulsion systems third, exactly the sequence recommended in hegemony anti-ship warfare manuals. They had used coordinated fire patterns that suggested knowledge of standard hegemony ship spacing and attack formations. Most disturbing, they had exploited design weaknesses in hegemony dreadnoughts that weren't publicly known even within the hegemony itself. "Sir," General Voth reported, his voice strained, "I've reviewed all reconnaissance data on the Sol system. There are inconsistencies." "What kind of inconsistencies?" "The kind that suggest our reconnaissance vessels may have been detected and studied rather than conducting covert observation." In the vast hall of the hegemony's military headquarters, the silence stretched like a taut cable about to snap. The implications were staggering. If humans had been aware of hegemony surveillance for decades, if they had been preparing defenses based on captured intelligence, if they had been studying hegemony technology and tactics, Admiral Krex's tentacles coiled tightly against his body, a defensive posture his species adopted when facing existential threats. "Operative Krex, I need you to analyze something else. Review all available data on human military development over the past 50 years. Look for technological leaps that don't align with their natural development curve." The young operative's fingers flew across his interface. Within minutes, his complexion had shifted to the pale blue that indicated profound distress among his people. "Sir," Krex reported quietly, "human technological advancement shows 17 distinct discontinuities over the past 5 decades. Each discontinuity corresponds to a period immediately following hegemony reconnaissance missions to their system." The pieces of the puzzle weren't just clicking into place anymore. They were slamming together with the force of colliding moons. The humans hadn't just known about the hegemony, they had been actively reverse engineering captured technology and preparing for eventual contact. "They've been playing us," General Thanes said, his voice filled with a mixture of admiration and horror. "For 50 years they've been letting us think we were the hunters while they prepared to become the prey that eats the predator." Commander Zilt's mandibles had stopped clicking entirely, frozen in a rictus of shock. "Admiral, what are our orders? Do we prepare a larger invasion force?" Krex stared at the holographic Earth spinning peacefully in the center of the room. Such a small, blue world. So far from the galactic core, so seemingly insignificant. So absolutely, terrifyingly dangerous. "Orders," Krex repeated slowly. "Our orders are to figure out exactly what we're dealing with before we make the mistake of underestimating humans again." Because one thing had become absolutely clear, Earth wasn't just another world to be conquered. Earth was a trap 50 years in the making, and the galactic hegemony had just walked straight into it. The question now was whether they could find a way out before the humans decided to spring it completely. 3 days later, Admiral Krex hadn't slept. His species could survive weeks without rest, but the mental exhaustion of trying to comprehend the human situation was taking its toll. The war room had become his permanent residence, filled with intelligence reports, tactical analyses, and increasingly disturbing revelations about Earth's true capabilities. "Admiral," Operative Krex announced from his workstation, "I finished analyzing human media broadcasts from the past century. You're not going to like what I found." Krex's laugh was hollow. "At this point, I'd be surprised if there was anything about humans I did like. What fresh horror have you uncovered?" "They've been making entertainment about us." The statement was so absurd that several officers actually stopped what they were doing to stare. General Voth looked up from his tactical projections with an expression of pure bewilderment. Entertainment? Voth rumbled. About the hegemony? Krex activated the main display, showing what appeared to be human visual media. They call them movies, television shows, books. For the past 80 years, they've been producing fictional stories about alien invasions. And, sir, the tactical scenarios they depict are remarkably similar to our standard operating procedures. The screen filled with images from human entertainment, massive spacecraft arriving at Earth, desperate battles in space, humans fighting against technologically superior aliens with inferior weapons but superior determination. The parallels to actual hegemony invasion protocols were uncomfortable in their accuracy. This particular film, Krex continued, highlighting a production from 30 years ago, shows alien invaders using the exact formation we employed in our attack. The humans in the story defeat the aliens by targeting their shield generators first, then their weapons arrays. Admiral Krex felt something cold settle in his stomach. Show me more. The parade of human entertainment that followed was like watching their own tactical manuals turned into dramatic performances. Humans had imagined, created, and distributed detailed scenarios about fighting alien invasions. They had explored strategies, weaknesses, and countermeasures through their storytelling. They've been war-gaming against us for decades, General Thane observed, his voice tight with realization. Not just their military. Their entire civilization has been thinking about how to fight us. Commander Zilt's mandibles began clicking again. Faster this time. Admiral, there's something else. I've been monitoring human communications since the battle. They're not preparing for our retaliation. What do you mean? I mean they're not reinforcing their defenses or mobilizing additional forces. Their military activity has actually decreased since they destroyed our fleet. The implication sent ripples of unease through the assembled officers. A species that had just survived its first alien contact should be in a state of maximum alert, preparing for inevitable retaliation. Humans were doing the opposite. They're confident, Krex realized with growing dread. They're not worried about what we might send next because they already know what we're going to do. Operative Krex cleared his throat nervously. Was it Camp or GXN, sir? There's more. I've detected significant changes in human communication patterns over the past 72 hours. They're coordinating something on a global scale. Military preparations? No, sir. It appears to be diplomatic in nature. The word diplomatic hit the war room like a stun grenade. In the hegemony's 3,000-year history, newly contacted species either surrendered immediately or fought until they were exterminated. None had ever attempted diplomacy after military contact. Show me, Krex ordered. The display shifted to show a complex web of communication traffic originating from Earth. The volume was staggering. Every major population center on the planet was involved in coordinated exchanges. More disturbing still, the communications were being directed outward, toward known hegemony territories. They're trying to contact other species, Krex reported. Species we've conquered. They're broadcasting on frequencies used by former civilizations that the hegemony absorbed decades ago. General Voth's face had gone pale. How do they know those frequencies? The answer came not from analysis or intelligence reports, but from a priority communication that suddenly appeared on Admiral Krex's personal display. The message header indicated it was from the Hegemony High Command, marked with the highest possible security classification. Krex opened the message with trembling tentacles as he read. His expression shifted from confusion to horror to something approaching panic. What is it? General Thane demanded. Krex looked up from his display, his voice barely above a whisper. High Command has received a communication from Earth. It's addressed to the Galactic Hegemony Council, requesting formal diplomatic negotiations. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of Commander Zilt's mandibles snapping completely shut in shock. That's impossible, Voth said flatly. They don't know our political structure. They don't know our diplomatic protocols. They can't possibly know how to contact High Command directly. Krex continued reading, his horror growing with each line. The communication demonstrates detailed knowledge of hegemony governance, including the names and titles of individual council members. It references specific articles of hegemony law regarding first contact protocols and prisoner exchange agreements. Prisoner exchange? Thane's voice climbed an octave. They're offering to return the crews of our destroyed dreadnoughts in exchange for formal recognition as a sovereign system and the establishment of diplomatic relations. The statement landed like a meteor in the war room. Every officer present had assumed the crews of the 12 dreadnoughts had been killed when their ships were destroyed. The idea that humans had somehow rescued enemy personnel from the wreckage was beyond anything they had considered possible. How many survivors? Commander Zilt managed to ask. Krex scrolled through the message, his expression growing more disturbed. All of them. Every single crew member from all 12 ships. They list them by name, rank, and serial number. The implications were staggering. Humans had not only destroyed 12 dreadnoughts with impossible ease, but they had somehow extracted nearly 50,000 hegemony personnel from the wreckage, identified them individually, and were now offering to return them as part of diplomatic negotiations. Sir. Operative Krex called out, his voice strained, I'm detecting massive energy signatures from the Sol system. Multiple sources. Previously undetected. The tactical display shifted to show the solar system, now dotted with energy readings that hadn't been there during the initial battle. Dozens of installations that had remained hidden were now revealing themselves, creating a defensive network that dwarfed what the humans had used against the first invasion fleet. They were holding back, General Thane said quietly. Everything they used against us was just a fraction of their actual capability. Admiral Krex stared at the display, pieces of an impossible puzzle finally forming a complete picture. They weren't defending themselves, they were conducting a job interview. Sir, think about it. They've been preparing for this for 50 years. They know our technology, our tactics, our political structure, our laws. They could have destroyed our fleet the moment it entered their system, but instead they let us approach, let us demonstrate our capabilities. Let us fire first. The horrifying logic of the situation became clear. They were testing us, seeing what we could do, measuring our response times, our tactical flexibility, our willingness to negotiate after a military defeat. General Voth's voice was barely audible. What kind of species tests a galactic superpower? The answer came from an unexpected source. The communication system suddenly activated, displaying an incoming transmission directly from Earth. The signal bypassed all hegemony security protocols as if they didn't exist. A human face appeared on the screen. The being was unremarkable by human standards, middle-aged, pleasant features, wearing what appeared to be formal attire. When it spoke, the translation was perfect, suggesting the humans had cracked hegemony linguistic codes as well. Greetings, Admiral Krex, and the assembled leadership of Hegemony Fleet 7. My name is Director Sarah Mitchell, representing the United Earth Defense Council. I hope this communication finds you well. The casual tone was somehow more terrifying than any threat could have been. Admiral Krex found his voice after several attempts. How are you contacting us directly? Director Mitchell smiled, an expression that somehow managed to be both friendly and deeply unsettling. We've been monitoring your communications for quite some time, Admiral. Your encryption is very sophisticated. But we've had decades to work on it. What do you want? Krex asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. We want to talk. Your species has built an impressive civilization, Admiral. 3,000 years of expansion, countless worlds under your control, technology that spans galaxies. Very impressive indeed. The human paused, her expression becoming more serious. But you've made one critical error in your expansion model, which is you assume that conquest is the only form of contact between civilizations. Earth would like to propose an alternative. General Thane leaned forward. What kind of alternative? Director Mitchell's smile returned, and this time it was genuinely warm. Partnership. General Thane. We believe that two advanced civilizations can accomplish far more through cooperation than either can through conquest. The suggestion was so alien to hegemony thinking that several officers actually laughed. The idea of partnership between conqueror and conquered was simply incomprehensible. And if we refuse, Admiral Krex asked, then you're free to leave. Mitchell replied calmly, we'll return your personnel, provide safe passage out of our system, and wish you well. Earth has no interest in expanding beyond our solar system, so we won't interfere with your other activities. The offer was so reasonable, so utterly contrary to every first contact scenario in hegemony history, that it took several moments for the officers to process what they had heard. That's it? Commander Zild asked. No demands? No threats? No ultimatums? Why would we threaten you? Mitchell asked, seeming genuinely puzzled. Threats only make sense if you want something from someone. Earth wants nothing from the hegemony except the opportunity to coexist peacefully. Admiral Krex stared at the human woman, trying to understand the mind behind those calm eyes. You've been preparing for 50 years. You've developed weapons that can destroy our most advanced ships. You've captured 50,000 of our personnel, and you're just offering to let us leave? Admiral, Mitchell said gently, did you really think we spent 50 years preparing just to fight you? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Krex reviewed everything they had learned. The human entertainment about alien contact, the careful study of hegemony technology and tactics, the precise knowledge of their political and legal systems. You've been preparing to join us, he realized with sudden clarity. Mitchell nodded approvingly. Very good, Admiral. Yes, Earth has been preparing for contact with galactic civilization. We've studied your history, your culture, your technology. We've learned your languages, analyzed your legal codes, and yes, developed the capability to defend ourselves if necessary. But ultimately, we want to be part of something larger. Humanity has always been curious about what lies beyond our small blue world. The hegemony represents the greatest collection of knowledge and civilization in the galaxy. We'd like to contribute to that. The communication ended, leaving the war room in absolute silence. Admiral Krex stared at the blank screen, his mind reeling from the paradigm shift he had just experienced. For 3,000 years, the hegemony had grown through conquest. They had never encountered a species that wanted to join them voluntarily, that had prepared itself not for war but for partnership. Admiral, General Thane said quietly, what are your orders? Krex looked around the room at his assembled officers, beings who had spent their entire careers conquering primitive worlds and enforcing hegemony rule through superior firepower. None of them had any experience with the situation they now faced. I think, Krex said slowly, we need to call High Command, and then we need to learn a very new way of doing business, because one thing had become absolutely clear. Earth wasn't just another world to be conquered or another threat to be neutralized. Earth was something the galactic hegemony had never encountered before. A species that wanted to earn their place among the stars rather than have it forced upon them. And that changed everything.